Welcome into the Inquirer podcast. It's Jeremy Werner and Joey Wagner at Memorial Stadium as Illinois reclaims the cannon. But we didn't think it'd be that hard to do as Illinois blows a 24-point deficit. They trail in the final minute to the worst Power 5 team in the country so far this year. But they force overtime as Hank Beatty and Pat Bryant get two big catches on that final drive. David Olano makes a field goal to force overtime. Pat Bryant scores on the first play of overtime. But Purdue scores a couple plays later, go for two, and Dylan Rosiak, the closer, gets the sack. Illinois ekes out 50-49 over Purdue. So it is a win, but there are a lot of discouraging things to talk about, some interesting things in the postgame that we got to get to. But Joey Wagner, I've watched a lot of games like that Illinois does not win. Barry Lundy said earlier in the week, we just got to score one more point than the other one. Barry Lundy's crew did its job because they scored one more point than the other team by getting 50.
Honestly, like the way we were talking at halftime, it's like Illinois might 30 them, and it might be one of those ugly Purdue games that you had seen the last couple of weeks. That third quarter, Jeremy, like let's just get I don't want to jump ahead of ourselves. That second half was a mess. The third quarter was a total mess. Illinois did squeak out a win. They're 5-1. You'd much rather, if you're Illinois, learn from obviously from a 1-point win. Brett Bielema made sure to hammer that point home. I don't think he was talking to us as much as he was talking to his locker room, and I don't know that I buy that entirely, that it's the best thing that could have happened to Illinois, but that got dicey at the end. And there was a point, Luke Altmyer, it's a gamer, man. He had a heck of a game. Get the cannon, move on to Michigan. A lot of questions. We'll get into those, Jeremy. A lot of questions.
Yeah, so I'm sitting here talking with Joey, like, how do we discuss this game? There is so much to happen. I mean, what was it, 4 hours of this game? Illinois is 4-0 under Brett Bielema in overtime games, 2-0 this year. And the margins of these games, we talk about all the time, Joey. The margins of wins and losses in the Brett Bielema era are insane. What's he now, 10-10 in one-score games? I mean, that's 20 games in 3.5 seasons decided by just one score. And Illinois has 3-1 or 3-0 in those games so far this year. So they're just kind of flipping what happened last year. So the margins are very, very small. But I figured the way the best I kind of break down this game is to totally rip off one of my favorite podcasts about the Chicago Bears. And that's Hogan John. Shout out to the Adams, who do a great job. We're going to do likes and dislikes of this game. But we feel like we have to start, Joey, with this is a real rivalry. And Ryan Walters is added to it. Tip of the cap to former defensive coordinator Ryan Walters, who called the Purdue offense today and scored 49 points, a team that had scored 44 points in its previous 4 games against FBS teams. But Brett Bielema finally kind of said it out loud, Joey. So I want to play a clip of Brett Bielema. It's about a minute and a half, but I think it is really instructive about what he said about this is the best thing that could happen to us. But then talking about why this game against Purdue kind of had him pissed off and riled up coming into it. So here's Brett Bielema.
It's a cannon, right? So to get that thing in the mix, so we can stop talking about that. And then to have a big lead, something we hadn't done this year, right? Like we won convincingly, probably Central Michigan and Eastern Illinois, but those kind of took some while to get there. So to have that lead and then kind of, I think, whether it's coaches, players, to let our guard down for a moment, like the worst things that can happen is big plays against our defense, give them free yards, and then obviously turnovers on offense and turnovers that lead to scores, and that was a double whammy. So it was the trifecta of how to screw it up, and to be able to live through that and win it. That you just to be that side, to be that fortunate to have that bad of football played and to come out and still win it. That's something that I think good teams do, right? And I think we are a good team. I think we're a 5-1 team that is knocking on the door doing something really cool, and our guys take a mentality to. I think they really wanted to win this game for maybe they knew I was really into it, right? I'm into every game, but this one just pissed me off on many different levels, to be quite honest. So, like I just know how we run our business, right? And I'll stand on that, right? So, like I love the way our guys fight, the way they practice, the way we prepare. I love the way we coach. I love the way they recruit. I love the way they develop. And to get this win was a big deal.
Sorry, I can't.
One more after this.
What pisses you off?
Just everything, right? Like anybody knows what I'm about, right? Like just handle your business, do things right, and a lot of good things can happen, right? So I like the way they all work.
Joey, you and I covering this program know that this game did mean something and that there has been a developing behind the scenes kind of brewing, even though there's a respect of what Ryan Walters did here and the success that he helped Brett Bielema have. But I don't think it was as much stealing the coaches because Brett Bielema picked between Kevin Kane and Aaron Henry, and he picked Aaron Henry, and some of those those graduate assistants became assistants under Walters. Stealing Reggie Love, maybe stealing Trey Smith, but I think it's more just the outward, bragging and stuff that has happened with Purdue, the showmanship of Ryan Walters over there, in last year's 44-19 score. I think that put a crawl on Brett Bielema, and he finally said it.
Yeah, we had first of all, I have never related to Brett Bielema more than anything in my life, and him saying it's just everything pisses him off. Oh, I was like, all right, man, you and I get each other. We're not all that different, man, you, Brett Bielema. Look, we kind of gotten the sense that that relationship had gotten frosty. It's just we'd never been able to pin it down how frosty it was, and for Brett Bielema to go up there and to say it, I think probably this week it became more and more clear inside the Smith Center that had really kind of taken a turn. I agree, there's a respect there. But when you're coming down to recruiting players, that's it, right? Like that's all of it.
You're competitors. You're not only competitors on a game, right? Because Kirby Smart and Nick Saban had to do that, right? But you're competing directly for players in the same system.
Your pitch is so similar, right?
Yeah, it's like, I was responsible for Sidney Brown. No, I was responsible for Sidney Brown. I was responsible for Devin Witherspoon. And, things get said behind the scenes that I think obviously is added some fire to this. So this meant a lot. And I can't imagine how Brett Bielema would feel if Dylan Rosiak didn't get to Ryan Brown and get that sack, and if Purdue would have kept scoring at will like they were. So we'll break down all of that. But for the first time, we know there's a rivalry, and we'll see if we get a round 3 of it.
Yeah, that's where it gets dicey. At halftime, I would have told you no. I don't know that Ryan, may have been along into the season. Him calling plays. Before we get into the likes and dislikes, Jeremy, that is a back against the wall move, and it tells me a lot. And I watched his post game before we jumped on here. He said, I felt like it was the best route to give our team wins. And I thought, that is not really a glowing endorsement of the rest of your offensive staff.
Desperation time.
That's right. If you feel compelled to do that, in the second half, looked like it worked out okay, but man, that's bold. And the Illinois defense almost let Ryan Walters cash in big on that bet. But man, I didn't know that it would come out. He kind of played it coy. So what do you mean? And then he said he called the play. That's huge. He's a defensive coach. That is a huge piece of news.
And I thought he drew up some good stuff. Like the way they were able to get those tight ends open against Illinois. But it felt like, let's start our likes and dislikes, Joey. Let's start with a dislike, because I know a lot of Illini fans are thinking of that after just beating one of the worst teams in the country by 1 point. Purdue scored on its final 5 offensive drives. And they also had the strip sack fumble recovery for a touchdown. So they had 6 scoring drives in the second half. Never punted. Never had a turnover on downs. Last drives for Purdue's offense, 85 yards, 64 yards, 75 yards, 75 yards, 43 yards, and of course the 25-yarder in overtime. Illinois had no answer. It felt like they were gearing up. It felt like during the first half they were kind of sitting back, and Purdue's just taking whatever they could get on the ground. But the good news was they only scored 3 points. Then it felt like Illinois loaded the box a little bit, and Purdue just countered with these passes. And without Xavier Scott, who's got an injury early in warm-ups, apparently. Tyler Strain got banged up late, but that secondary just got exposed. Felt like Miles Scott was getting pulled up a little bit. So I'm interested to watch the film, but the secondary got exposed. The linebackers continue to struggle. But Purdue's offense had scored 44 points against FBS opponents in 4 games. They just scored 49 on you after or was it 46 after halftime? Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous for Illinois. They had 533 yards in this game. The backup quarterback, Ryan Brown, who was impressive, had 297 passing yards, 288 of that in the second half, 3 touchdowns, 118 yards on the ground. He eluded some pressure, but Illinois' guys just couldn't get to him. And then Illinois had no counter for him from the linebackers or defensive backs.
Purdue entered this game in the bottom 10 in the country statistically in every offensive category except for rushing yards. And they did that. Like you can't have that. You're coming off of an open week, Jeremy. Like that, there's no excuse for that. I don't know how. I understand the late switch to quarterback throws a wrinkle, right, to lose Hudson Card and go to Ryan Brown, but quarterback isn't what just making a quarterback change doesn't change everything. The line still struggles. Their wide receivers still struggle. Like I don't know how you defend that or how you.
It felt like last
Aaron
year,
Henry's
Joey.
going to pitch that to us on Monday, right?
It felt like last year. Felt like you had no answer. Felt like you didn't have the athletes to cover. Felt like you didn't have really anything going for you. And like it felt like Wisconsin late with Braden Locke, the backup quarterback, coming in, and Ryan Brown just owns you. So I know Illinois fans came in this week like, typical Illinois is going to be a game. You're up 27-3 at halftime. Defense, just get a couple stops. Obviously, the special teams onside kick, but like defense, just get a stop and you win this game by a couple touchdowns and feel decently good about it. So it was alarming, and I'm really interested to see what Aaron Henry has to say. I'm interested to break down the film with Jay Lehman, but that was an alarming setback because you had no answer, no response to whatever they were doing. Ryan Walters. I know he knows Aaron Henry well and this defense well, but the fact that they scored 40 points in the second half was ridiculous.
No, you can't have that. And I thought we would be talking after the first half about the rush defense, which has been a huge point of conversation for us for 5 weeks. We've talked about that on this pod and pregame pods. I mean, that had kind of been like the red flag of this defense is, man, they really struggle against the run. And then Penn State happens and you think, okay, how far on the scale is this shifted to Penn State is just got two really good running backs and a heck of a line, and how much of this is, man, this rush defense really needs some work. And it played out in the first half. Purdue threw on a fourth down. It's like, what in the world are you doing? One, why are you throwing it behind the line of scrimmage? And two, just run it. They can't figure out this quarterback keeper, this option system. And then, I mean, I didn't have 200 and – well, they had 9 passing yards, Jeremy, in the first half. Purdue did. They had 288 in the second half. That was not on my bingo board to a redshirt freshman backup quarterback who had thrown 17 passes against FBS teams, and 2 of them were picked.
Yeah.
Like, that's rough. And the only play really that I was like, okay, was they had that nice little to the tight end. They had that nice little fake where they just went right over the top. That was a really
pop pass. That's an old school pop pass.
Designed. And I'm like, they came at a good time. That was a really good call. But otherwise, they had the flea flicker, and I get that. Torrey Cox got burned on a big play. That flea flicker, it wasn't like they got super crazy in the bag of tricks to put up they just were picking apart Illinois, and you can't have that against a team that struggles as mightily as they do with a backup quarterback.
So you're starting to wonder, our defense is, figuring out Illinois a little bit. Kolodnicki knew to attack the linebackers, and I think Ryan Walters obviously knew that. Like, let's give it to Devin Huckabee, and let's give it to our tight ends. Like, the tight ends were the guys that kept getting Illinois exposed there. So, and Ryan Brown, like, the defensive line just couldn't get to him, and they couldn't make a play on him. The lack of athleticism up front was a little alarming tonight. So it'll be interesting to see what they got. All right, give me a like or a dislike.
Luke Altmyer.
By the way, wait. Before we get to that, I'm concerned first. Sorry, Joe. I'm concerned first half. Like, first half, you were concerned, Michigan's just going to run over Illinois.
100%.
Second half, I was like, Oregon's going to put 70 on you. That was my concern.
And then I left postgame, and I thought, before I get to what I liked, which I have, and you cut me off, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
At first, I thought Michigan should just go back to orgy and just run. And then I saw the pass defense in the second half. I thought, I don't know. Does it matter? Like, I'm curious if Michigan pivots, because they've said Tuttle is going to start this game. I'm fascinated to see if they pivot off of that based on, Illinois really struggling against a quarterback who can move back there.
Yeah. All right, go with your like. Sorry to cut you off.
It's okay. It happens. Luke Altmyer. We need to get the bad with him out of the way, and that was a strip sack. You've seen that crop up, 2 times a season, give or take. That's just got to be kind of that internal clock where you've got to take off. So there were times on Monday, Barry Lunny talked about keeping his eyes downfield, and there were times today where you thought, forget downfield, man. Put the ball down and run, and some of their better drives, he did that. He was balling. Luke Altmyer had a heck of a good football game today. Illinois got a quarterback. We've said that for a while. He was 20 of 34 passing, 379 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had 60 rushing yards on 10 attempts. That factors in sacks. I mean, that was a heck of a performance by him. Shout out to his wide receivers, Jeremy. We'll get there. But he is continuously proving that he's a top half of the Big Ten guy. And let's be honest, the defense did not give him a lot of breathing. Like, he had to be perfect for the better part of the last 20 game minutes in that neighborhood and make big plays with his arms, with his legs. The value of a quarterback. You've seen teams come in here and have off games everywhere else around, but they've got a quarterback who can bail them out. And you're seeing more and more. Luke Altmyer's not perfect. He would tell you that. Barry Lundy would tell you that. Brett Bielema would tell you that. But he comes up big in big moments for this team, and you can just see he's got command of this offense. Those guys, forget that captain talk we had 5 weeks ago. Those guys are all in on Luke Altmyer. Josh McCray said he's just calm. He just keeps everything calm in the huddle. Kind of like we talked with Brandon Peters did that. But Luke Altmyer makes the plays when they get out of the huddle. I'm not trying to put down Brandon Peters, but Luke Altmyer is backing that calmness up with really, really big moments on the field.
It's amazing. Like his first half, I didn't think it was his best. I thought Barry really schemed up some plays for Zachary Franklin, Pat Bryant in the flat, even the running backs, getting those guys involved. I thought Luke delivered well, but like sometimes he missed some deep throws in that first half, and you're sitting up 24-3 at halftime. I'm like, Lucas still isn't playing his best, but then he has that strip sack, and you're wondering how do they bounce back? And then Purdue scores 14 points in that 30-second split there, and you're like, oh, now the offense has some pressure on them. Time after time after time, Luke Altmyer and this offense answer the call and have your quarterback make some of these massive plays, Joey. I think of that 3rd and 6 where he scrambles, looks like he's going to run. Josh McCray's blocking for him. And then Josh McCray releases, and Luke holds up just enough to deliver to McCray for a huge 3rd down catch, and then to end in the end zone for some of these drives. But his running in that 4th quarter to start that scoring drive, 62 yards on that one drive. And then in overtime, before overtime, to get the field goal to set up for David Alano, right? Like 2 big deliveries to Pat Bryant, I think, was on 3rd down. I think Hank Beatty was on 3rd down. And then obviously the first play of overtime to hit a guy like that. He's playing like an all Big Ten quarterback. I think he's playing like a top 4 quarterback in the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening in Eugene right now, but those two are going to be in that conversation as well.
I take Altmyer over Aller, right? I take Altmyer over pretty much anybody, but Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard's got the talent around him. If Altmyer were in Ohio State, I think he'd be doing just great. 379 yards, career high, 3 touchdowns, 60 yards rushing. Go ahead, Joe.
No, that's it. It's again, if we're gonna really zoom in on one thing, it's somehow there's got to be more communication for that pressure for him, because he gets lit up on some of those blitzes to his backside. And those are where those strip sacks come from. I thought Illinois got a little bit lucky in the 4th quarter that he was ruled down. I don't know that he was down, but I know there wasn't enough video evidence to overturn it, Jeremy. So, man, that was a heck of a day for him. Do you want me to give a like or a dislike, or do you want to go?
Give him a like. I know you're going to talk about him too. Josh McCray. This is a guy that I've doubted his role, right? And through the first 2 or 3 games, I'm like, what does he add that you don't have? But Caden Fagan being out, and Aiden Lawfrey struggling to get going, and Khalil Valentine, I think you're seeing what his weakness is. As a freshman, he can't run through tackles and he can't block. Some of those sacks, it felt like Khalil Valentine was a part of those. Josh McCray can block really well, but he just gets north and south, Joey. He's more decisive even than Fagan, even though Fagan had a couple good games. But you're going to need Josh McCray, because it sounds like Caden Fagan's going to be out for a little bit. Brett Bielema said afterwards, didn't give a lot of specifics, but that they're getting consultations from multiple people, multiple doctors. Hyperextended his leg in practice the other day. So I don't know how serious that'll be. We'll get more information as we go on, but it sounds like they expect him to be out for a little bit. But for Josh McCray to not only have 78 yards rushing, 5 yards of carry, 2 touchdowns, but in the passing game, 3 catches, 46 yards, and a touchdown. That looked like Josh McCray from 3 years ago, right? And Brett Bielema got emotional after the game talking about him, because we know he loves this kid. He absolutely loves this kid, and it was rewarded. So, I've doubted the role. Kudos to Josh for proving us wrong and coming up huge, because he's going to be huge for this team. They need him the rest of the way.
Yeah, Brett Bielema didn't say our name in particular, but he said, you guys see all these other backs come in. And they're highly rated backs. Caden Fagan's highly rated back. You want a good battle for Aiden Lawfrey, you go get composite 4-star Khalil Valentine. He said, you guys kind of talk about all the new guys. And here's Josh McCray. And he was really emotional talking about Josh McCray battling through what was 2 years that were difficult. And I talked to him very briefly, Jeremy, after the game before the big media scrum, and it wasn't as easy. And Josh McCray is not a guy who's going to sit there with us and with 10 cameras in his face and woe is me this whole thing, right? Like we just learned that about him since he's been here. But he said, it was tough. There were days I didn't know if I was going to, just mount injuries, and it's a lot to deal with. But man, he came through, and there were times early in the season that you and I had said, I'm not seeing, go with Lawfrey, go with Fagan. And then it became very clear, probably halfway through the second quarter, that you got to have Josh McCray on the football field. And he's had flashes, right? I thought Caden Fagan had put it together the last 2 weeks, and kind of in the background there was Josh McCray, not as consistent in games as Fagan, but he had moments where, you think of that third down catch at Penn State that he ran forever to convert what they had no business converting. And you thought, there's still some wheels there. There's that veteran savvy, the one-handed catch at Nebraska. He's had all of these little moments in time pieced together. And I thought tonight was his best game, Jeremy, that we've seen out of him since his freshman year. Is that fair for you to say? I mean, you can look back at some group of 5 team maybe last year, but he had
124 total yards today.
Yeah, 3 touchdowns, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, this
monstrous.
It's his best game since his freshman year. And you're right, Illinois is going to lean on him. I would expect them to lean on him primarily. I wondered coming in when we found out that Caden Fagan was out. I want to say we did not know. Like, it's not like we were sitting on this. That was a very surprising thing to see on the injury report. Brett Bielema said the injury happened on Tuesday. Still trying to figure out what that looks like for Illinois. But I wondered how that was going to play out. Were they going to try to split it up as much as they could? And they did early. They did rotate those 3 guys. But it became clear that McCray had to be out there. He had really big moments. He just looked like that guy who was there as a freshman, who can pace this thing. And the difference is now they've got a quarterback who you don't need Josh McCray to do all that. You don't need a Chase Brown that year to do all that. You can lean on Luke Altmyer. Real quick, Fedigator asked about Jordan Anderson. I'm curious. We know we've been splitting time between running back and tight end. Does Fagan's injury, for however long that lasts, does that shift Anderson back primarily more into that running back room? I would think it would make sense to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Give a dislike, Joey. I got one offhand if you want. I got 2 more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Big plays. Defense had not given up big plays most of this year. I think it was 4 of 30-plus yards coming into this game that they had given up, which was tied for like 3rd or top 5 in the country. They gave up 3 passes of 40-plus yards today and 3 runs of 20-plus yards. Altogether, they count big plays on these stats of passing plays of 15 yards and running plays of 10-plus yards. They gave up 15 big plays today. So that's concerning because that's what the defense was doing a little bit too much last year, just getting gashed for these big gains. What I've loved about the defense is it's bend but don't break because they're forcing these long drives. They're forcing 3rd downs. I don't even know how many 3rd downs Purdue faced in the second half. I'll look that up here because it felt like it barely was that way. They were staying way ahead of the sticks, but mostly they were just getting these huge chunks of yardage for 5, 6, 7 play scoring drives.
Yeah, my dislike, I'll just build off that because I think they work hand in hand. But dislike is the secondary of this game. I know you were missing Xavier Scott. I know Tyler Strain was dinged up, so you really had to dig into the depth. That was a strength of this team early on in the season, and I thought with a freshman or a redshirt freshman quarterback, really inexperienced, that Illinois should have been able to load the box and really stop him from running and make him make plays against a secondary that had played much better this season than it did a year ago. And he just found windows in one-on-one coverage. You look at Torrey Cox got burned. I know Caleb Patterson got hit for one, critical, I believe it was 3rd down, and they went and attacked him a little bit.
And Matthew Bailey is usually the guy in the tight end. Again, I didn't get to see a lot of the replays and we'll watch the film, but I would imagine he got burned on some of these tight end plays too.
Yeah, and I know Xavier Scott was out, but I can't sit entirely on the idea that it was all because he was out. I understand the communication between him and Matt Bailey and Miles Scott and how critical that is, but I'm not going to chalk up what happened in the second half simply to being without Xavier Scott and Tyler Strain. Not long-term concerned, but I didn't like what you saw to this game, given the circumstances around what Purdue had offensively.
Yeah, and you think of who you're going up against and how he looked in that second half. And again, I give a lot of kudos to the play calling by Purdue, but 14 of 19 for 3 touchdowns, 288 yards in the second half. They only had 4 third downs, Joey. 3 of 4. They scored 46 points after halftime. That's just ridiculous. 11.9 yards per play after halftime for Purdue. That's not good enough. Let me give one more dislike. Purdue had 8 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. I don't think all of that is on the offensive line either. I thought the running back struggled to pass protect, but I thought Luke held onto the ball a little bit too long, and especially in that first half. Remember, Barry was telling us on Monday to keep his eyes downfield as he scrambles. I think that was in Luke's head a little bit too much in the first half, and he adjusted in the second half and made a lot of plays with his feet. But that strip sack, like, it can't happen. That's a game-changing play. It reminded me of Purdue last year. So, listen, Luke had an A game, almost an A-plus game, but those are things that can't happen. And it is one of his weaknesses is facing that pressure. But still, the offensive line, he's facing too much pressure, right? Like, that's happening too much.
Yeah, the offensive line, we saw Brandon Henderson go in and start at right guard today. You would have liked to see an answer on that offensive line solidify over the course of these first 6 games to this point, especially when you have an open week. Blended in there, like Chrysler rotated in. It's just not what we thought it was going to be, not what we were told it was going to be coming into the season. And I'm with you. Not all of those sacks are directly on that offensive line. Guy Michael in the chat made a good point that the strip sack, Khalil Valentine missed a block on that, right? So, like, that falls on him as well. But I thought the offensive line was going to be a strength. We just haven't seen that. We've not seen that quite to this point. I thought there were moments tonight where they really created some good holes for Josh McCray, for Aiden Lawfrey, and Luke Altmyer to get downfield. There's flashes. It's not like this is altogether 60 minutes of terrible offensive line play. That's not the reality of what we're seeing on the field. But I thought it would be 45 minutes of strength of the offensive line. And, you know, if you're kind of trying to break it down like that. So I'm curious about that. I'm curious about what they continue to try to push different buttons on that interior to see what they can find.
All right, you go, Joey. Like or dislike?
Pat Bryant, 7 touchdowns. He's 3 away from tying the program record. I don't know if you had heard that was a possibility, Jeremy, coming into the season. The trust, he said, going into that overtime, he told Barry Lunny, hey, this is what I think we should run. 1-play touchdown to Pat Bryant for 25 yards. And what an excellent job of getting a foot down in the end zone. We give Luke Altmyer all the flowers in the world because he's playing at a really high level right now. But Pat Bryant and the connection that those two have built, I mean, he makes his quarterback look good. His quarterback makes him look good. To see Pat really emerge in the way that we have, I don't know. Like, we thought he would take a leap. I think that was a really fair thing that a lot of people came into the season. That wasn't a hot take or a bold prediction that he would take a leap. But this kind of leap has been really impressive for him. And it gives Illinois a heck of a weapon on the outside. And, of course, the presence of Zachary Franklin on the other side of things surely makes his life a lot easier.
Congrats to Zachary Franklin for his first touchdown of the season, long awaited, but 4 catches for 60 yards. Pat Bryant, 4 catches, 101 yards, 1 touchdown, and just coming up clutch late. Like, even that, 28-yard, or was it 34 yards? And on that final drive of regulation to help set up the field goal was huge. But Luke obviously trusts him, and Luke's putting it on the money, and Pat's going up and making the catches. He looks like an NFL receiver. To me, that guy looks like a top 4-round guy for sure. And I think he's got a chance to move up because he just does a little bit of everything for you. He can do stuff after the catch. He can go up and get it, and then he blocks his ass off. So kudos to Pat Bryant. And, hey, congratulations. He's now engaged. Told me he got engaged last week to someone he's been dating for the last 2 years. So congratulations to Pat. I give a like and dislike. Special teams today.
Yeah, yes.
David Alano, man, he's good. He's really good. We were talking to somebody coming up on the elevator. Like, if they don't make that play to Hank Beatty, I think it's like a 65-yard field goal. Like, just Machowski come on with the wind at his back. Do they make that? But that was just a huge play for Hank Beatty. But David Alano continues to kick really, really well. But how do you not recover that onside kick? That is atrocious. All you have to do is get a first down, game is over. You're not able to get it. Like, I saw a couple guys scrambling for it. Brett Bielema said afterwards, too many guys looking at the ball, not anybody getting it. So just inexcusable.
Yeah, you can't have that. And I'm not going to give Illinois a ton of credit for that botched kickoff that in the first half that Purdue inexplicably didn't get a hand on. Illinois, Luke Zardzin was really good heads up play. Purdue just bungled that, right? But David Alano, huge field goals for him. He's a heck of a kicker. Like
30
Illinois
yards, 49 yards, and 38 yards today.
Yeah, and that doesn't. Tanner Heckel had a really good, rep as a gunner there to pin Purdue, and I thought the coverage teams were good. Purdue run it out at one point. They got to like the 18, but that onside kick kind of sits there, right? It leaves a bad taste, and I don't know how you don't just literally fall on that. That just feels like it sat. I was down in the end zone, felt like it sat on the turf forever, and Purdue ended up getting it. So, what do you
defense? Your defense had no chance there. Like you're like, this is going to be over. Like ball game, and they went down. They scored too quickly, right? And they gave Luke Altmyer another chance. Neither defense could stop either of them. So
that's the thing. Like Ryan Walters, it was bold to go for 2. If you're Illinois, obviously you win, but your offense, you would have been put up against the wall, right? Like you had to have your offense score every single time because there was really no reason to think that defense was going to get a stop if Purdue elected to kick.
I loved Ryan Walters going for 2 when he's down 34-28. Somebody was saying, why are you doing that? It's because, well, if you miss it, you got a chance to get 2 the next time, and the metrics say you're likely to get one of them. But then if you make it, all of a sudden you're putting pressure on Illinois, and they're chasing that point. So I love that decision. You knew he was going to go for 2. I tweeted out in the moment, like if they score a touchdown, they're going to go for 2 and try to win this game. And kudos to Dylan Rosiak for making a heck of a play, and it's a good play call by Aaron Henry as well. But finally, somebody able to get Ryan Brown down to the turf.
They got some pressure. Like when we pop up the PFF stats, I know not everyone loves the grade, but when we look at the stats, you're going to see some pressures from this Illinois defense.
I feel like Seth Coleman had a ton.
Yeah, they just couldn't get him down. And I'm not trying to excuse that because pressures are great, but you got to get the guy down. But I felt like they were disruptive. He just moved and he ran, and he was a problem for them to get down. And I do think on some of those, I'll do a dislike real quick while I'm ranting here. That option should not have looked like it did in the first half. There were reads where it's like, how does this happen? How is Ryan Brown 8 yards downfield before people realize he has the ball? That you knew what you were getting into with him. You knew he was going to run the ball. We've seen that a little bit with some of these outside linebackers over the course of the last couple of years where their reads don't look right on the edge there and just allow those mobile quarterbacks to get out. I thought that was kind of discouraging to see in the first half.
The other part was, I know Joe Barna had one, so I'm not trying to single out these guys, but I know like they need to upgrade the talent at linebacker, right? But there's a reason Ryan Mead is playing right now over James Kreutz, because I saw James Kreutz like just not be in a gap or not have the right responsibility, it felt like, because all of a sudden there's a huge hole. Those missed assignments are just huge plays. So even if you don't make the play, at least you're holding up the play a little bit, slowing it down so other people can get there. But yeah, the linebackers are not playing well. I mean, nobody on defense really played well at all today, but it's a huge concern going into the Michigan game, right? And I know it's Jack Tuttle and not Alex Orji right now, but
for now,
but it's a huge concern. Just guys not being able to make the plays. Like it just feels like there's a talent gap at that second level for sure. And then the defensive line, I thought they produced more today.
Yeah, I'll give away a hint of VIP content, Jeremy. A lot of recruits here. One was 2026 linebacker Cam Thomas. I said, what do they say they like about you? Man, my speed. I thought, yeah, no kidding.
At 6'2", 220.
Yeah, how fitted are you for a jersey right now? They might try to get you out there today. It's, we come back to it every week, and it's real every week. Like that linebacker group is, I thought they had a lot of under the radar guys in the last couple of years when you look at James Kreutz. And someone asked about Kaneno Deluga. Here's what we know, and we just need to say it again. He had the ankle injury at Iowa last year. Brett Bielema has indicated that he's just not quite physically back to where he was. And I think it's also worth noting, last year he was primarily an overhang linebacker with his biggest emphasis was rushing the passer. What they're needing right now out of that position is someone who can play in space a little more. So even pre-injury, Kanena Odeluga, that wasn't the best physical body type for that. I think it would be worth considering in the offseason as you sort through this outside linebacker position, if there's a fit there just to maybe move him in there full time and let him be a full-time pass rusher who can drop back. I know that would take a body transformation, and he's not the longest, but that's where it is. Right now, it's Dylan Rosiak, it's Ryan Mead, and it's James Krutz when they need him. You've got to hit that in the portal. You just
Huge.
do. To me, it's, after, I don't remember which game it was, you re-ranked positions in terms of top to – tight ends is probably past linebacker for me right now. Linebacker is the most concerning position on the field for Illinois. And it's just a talent thing. I don't think there's a lot of missed execution. Ryan Mead's in the right spots. Dylan Rosiak. It's just they need more speed. They need more length. They need more speed there.
I'm going to give another Barry Lunny. I mean, I think he's having a great year, Joe. I know they didn't score against Penn State. I just think you got overwhelmed there. I didn't hate the play designs and a lot of those things, but I think he's in year 3. Him and his quarterback are just really connected really well. And I asked Luke about it. I go, obviously you have to play well for Barry to look good, but what is happening? He said, that's it. He was calling the same stuff last year. I just didn't execute it well enough and had to go through his struggles and all that. But coming on the other end of it, the offense coordinator gets some credit for that. And he's obviously the quarterback's coach too. And I just loved what he did in the first half, getting those guys out on the edge, finding ways to get all these guys open against man coverage when they're going to bracket them, but getting those guys out in the flat, I thought was really good. And then they had a response, going to Luke on some of these designed runs. Some of those were designed runs, going to the zone read option, and Luke having the heads up that I'm going to keep it on some of these. I just thought he had an answer for everything. And when I didn't feel like Aaron Henry sometimes had a response or his players had a response, Barry Lunny and his unit had a response. So I think he's a guy who deserves an extension. I want to lock him up, and I want Barry Lunny to stay here because I think what they're doing offensively is really, really good stuff right now.
He's $1 million coordinator for Illinois. That's an extension that needs to happen. But I like that he gets those receivers out in space and lets them gets them the ball quickly. Let Pat Bryant bulldoze people. I thought Pat Bryant had some plays in that first quarter where he just ran through Purdue defensive backs, and it wasn't anything where you're pushing it super far downfield. It was just a matter of get these guys, get Sakari Franklin, Colin Dixon. That's a like. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it because I know we got to move on. Colin Dixon was a like for me. I think his stock is really, really going up in a pretty quick amount of time. But
not a ton of playing time for him, but 2 catches, 69 yards. Nice for Colin.
Nice. It's not always about just throwing it downfield and pushing it downfield. There's a time and there's a place. Barry Lunny is just so good at getting those guys in motion, getting Luke Altmyer on the run, a quick throw to those guys in the flat and let them get some extra yards. I thought he had a really good game. Obviously, they scored 50 points. That's not really a bold take there. But, yeah, man, I'm with you. Lock him up, extend him, keep him around, and keep that continuity with the quarterbacks. That's a huge deal, and quarterback coach for a reason.
Yeah. All right, you got any more before we get to the questions here from our people on YouTube?
I get it. I understand the angst that this game caused. I think it's incredibly fair to lean in and look at the things that are concerning, because I don't think anything today, outside of some secondary busts, I don't think anything today was a new concern. It was just more or less heightened. Hey, can they stop the run? The secondary we talked about, can they run the ball effectively? You saw that start to come around. It is a win, and I feel like as we sat here for 40 minutes, man, it doesn't really feel like this is a typical post-game win podcast. I get it, but I get it. This is not a good Power 5 team. That is a team.
You were a 23.5-point favorite and won by 1 in overtime, and you couldn't get a stop against this team, which is the worst offense in the Power 5.
The head coach, the defensive-minded head coach, is calling offensive plays, and you run 1 by 1 point. I understand, but at the same time, I don't buy in full force to Brett Bielema's this is the best thing that could have happened to us. He's not again, when you hear these press conferences, Brett Bielema probably 65% of the time may as well just have that on a live feed in his locker room. He's talking to those guys. I do think, of course, you want to learn some of these lessons after a win, and this would have been a whole different tone if you lose this. But he didn't win the football game, Jerry.
Yes. Can I get my like?
Yes.
Last one. Illinois is 5-1. It took us 40 minutes to get here. Illinois is 5-1 on October 12th when their over-under was 5.5. Listen, do I expect them to be a 10-win team based on what I saw against Penn State, a way better team than you, which beat USC and looks like they're going to be on their way to a college football playoff eventually? No. Do I feel like great about Illinois after what I saw against Purdue? No, but like you still won. You are 5-1 at this moment when there's not a lot of teams that are 5-1. You're probably going to hang on in the rankings, setting up a ranked versus ranked matchup against Michigan. You found a way to win this game. Can you imagine the discussion? I can. Of if they lost this game, because they'd be staring down the barrel of 4-4, Joey, and being like, "Oh, did that 4-0 start? Did it mean anything? Was, like it's still a bunch of toss-up games in the Final Four, but it's like, is this team still going to get to a bowl game? Like, are they going to hold it together here? Because injuries are starting to pile up. There's a dislike. They're starting to make an impact, I think, on this depth chart a little bit with Caden Fagan. We'll see with Xavier Scott. We'll see with Tyler Strain and some of those guys, but you're 5-1 and you got a chance to have one of the best seasons in the last 20 years. So they won the game. That's a big like.
Yeah, there's no doubt. If you lose this game, all that, like, it took pretty much the whole season last year to lose the 2022 goodwill. You lose the first 5 games of goodwill by 10 o'clock tonight, and that's probably on the late end if you lose this game. So they want – it's not pretty, and it's incredibly fair to be critical of what you saw because that defense was disastrous. And the third quarter for Illinois was totally disastrous. It's a heck of a lot easier, I think, to stomach some of that while still maintaining that concern when you realize you're 5-1. I know Dom is upset again. I don't – and he's saying that Illinois is not going to be ranked. I don't know. You know what? Maybe not. They're not going to move up, but I don't know how you would drop them out of there. That you're talking about if your team's going to be ranked after a win. I mean, it's come a long way. But yeah.
But here's the thing: is as long as you win enough games, no one's going to. How many people are actually going to sit there if you win at least 3 more games, right, and get to 8-4 or something like that? How many people, when they're in Florida at some bowl game, are going to be like,
a couple of people in this chat.
But like, you're still going to get there. It still counts. So that's all I'm saying is like, it's going to be a footnote as long as you continue to have some success. The question is whether these are signs that this team will not sustain success and they eke their way to 7 wins or whatever it is. So that'll be the interesting part moving forward. But you did get the win. As Barry Lunny said, going into on Monday, our job is to win by 1 more point. Well, they did it. They did it against one of the worst teams in the country.
Barry Lunny's got to be like, I got to quit manifesting this stuff. This is getting a little out there. Yeah, you're right. The beer, the Diet Coke, whatever your drink of choice is going to taste the same, whether you're in Arizona, whether you're in Florida, whatever bowl game that you travel to. The next 2 are tough. The next 2 are tough, 100%. Those are very difficult games. And then you get into that November stretch that we had circled from, before the season for really winnable games, and a chance to what we thought was going to make a bowl push to really bolster this win total as you get into that postseason.
All right, let's get to some of these questions. Good super chat. So if you got a super chat, you can send those in. We'll be here for about 15 more minutes probably. Brad, what's up, Brad? I'm not convinced that any coach Illinois has had in the last 30 years pulls that game out. Ugly, yes. A much needed win to stay ahead of schedule. Also, yes. Thanks for the $10 super chat. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how many close games Illinois is getting to. That's what we talk about with Brett Bielema so much. We get 20 games decided by 1 score here, and they're 10-10 in those. This is a game Illinois loses last year. This game Illinois loses the last 20 years, it feels like.
Yeah, we've seen Illinois lose this game 100 times. Maybe the score isn't always 50-49, but
they can win a game that way, Joe. It's amazing.
I never thought I'd see the day. This is a game they lost to Purdue in 2021. This is a game they lost a few times in 2021 to UTSA. You've seen it come through, and I mean, again, it's probably gets the heart rate going a little bit for fans, but yeah, I mean, Illinois has lost this game a good number of times.
Yeah, or they don't even have a chance in this game. Def, all McCray's early success was with a different offense coordinator. That's right, under Tony Peterson. Kudos to Lunny using McCray to his strengths and letting his guys just do what they do best. But man, Luke Altmyer, like I say every week, that's my quarterback. Best quarterback for Illinois in quite a long time. You can put him in that Nathan Shieldhouse tier for sure. I'd be interested to see if Illini fans, that date back a while, put him in that Kirk Hittner tier, because what Luke is putting together right now in the season is pretty special for a quarterback in Illinois history, at least since the 1980s when they had that great run.
Yeah, I thought our guy Def made a good point too. I mean, Josh McCray was really recruited with that Tony Peterson offense, that I get downhill, and that changed a little bit with Barry Lunny, and obviously injuries have played a role in that for Josh McCray, but this probably isn't the ideal offense for him, but he's making the most of it. He's being very decisive. That's the biggest thing. We haven't seen that consistently from running backs, that decisive runs, and you're starting to see that pile up with him. But that's a good point, Def. This is not the system per se that Josh McCray was recruited to.
You're seeing him in the pistol a little bit, right? Get him downhill, like not standing next to Luke. I like how they're using that, because man, when he gets downhill, he can really pack a punch, and he's the most decisive running back they have. Like, he's got the best vision, hits the hole, knows where to go. Def with another one tonight. Looked like Lovie Smith switched to a 3-4 base. Told you guys in week 3, bend but don't break against CMU, and KU's Jeff Grimes is a turnover or bust going forward. That's a problem for this defense. They're not getting enough turnovers. And it feels like that's an adjustment that opponents are having. I'm not exactly sure, but they didn't have a forced turnover besides the turnover on downs, right? So that's 3 straight games without a takeaway, or one in the last 3 games.
They had one. Yeah, they had that Torrey Cox pick at Nebraska in the end.
Yeah, so one in the last 3 games.
Yeah, you've got to make those plays. And again, that's why I thought you would load up the box and trust your DBs. I picked Miles Scott as a pick to click. That did not click for me, right? Like, I thought that was going to be a recipe for Illinois. I'm curious how you get back to that, how you manifest that. And I don't know that answer's sitting there that doesn't include stop the run better, make teams throw into your secondary.
Def's dominating this, but Def keeps giving the super chat, so we'll let him go. Does Brett trust his place kickers enough? Olano has nailed 48 into the win before. Brett has cost us a potential 6 or combined points in regulation or 2 OT games. Not trusting Olano. It felt like he just wanted to end the game. Like, really, on that turnover on downs, really give his offense a chance to just kind of stay on the field, because the defense was not staying on the field and forcing Purdue to punt the ball or anything like that. So I think he wanted his offense, and it was into the wind, right? 46, 47 yards, something like that. So I get it in hindsight that's a huge 3 points there, but I think they were trying to go up 3, because they would have gone up 13 at that point, I believe, if they make a field goal. But if not, you're giving them the ball down 10 in their territory.
Yeah, I think he's got a ton of trust in his place kickers. He's been all over what he thinks of those guys for the last couple weeks here. I just think you got to a point where 3 wasn't going to cut it. The way that your defense was playing, the way Purdue was moving the ball, I didn't hate that. I understood his logic there. Again, in hindsight, it didn't work out. But yeah, I think he's got a ton of trust in those guys. And had Luke Altmyer not hit Hank Beatty on that 3rd down, I think Ethan Machowski trots out there for a 65-yard field goal. And, I don't know that Brett Bielema would have batted an eye at that.
Yeah, that would.
I mean, beyond the obvious of like,
we would have had 66.
Oh, damn, 66 is a long field goal. There's a natural hesitation with that, but I think he's got a lot of trust in those guys.
Good question from Fedigator, $5 super chat. Thanks, Fed. What are your win-loss predictions of our final 6 games? I think I go 3-3.
Yeah,
I think I go 3-3.
I felt kind of lame picking 3-3. It feels right down the middle. I don't think you're going to beat Oregon. Like, we'll just dive into this real quickly here before. And the way you're not stopping the run right now, I don't know how you could feel all that comfortable with Michigan coming to town. The atmosphere might will you to that, right? A sold-out crowd might be able to push you closer to that. I don't think Minnesota scares you. I don't think it terribly scares you. I don't think Rutgers terribly scares you. Michigan State and Northwestern. 3-3 feels right, because I think you're going to lose probably the next 2. And then there's a trip. There's always a trip-up game. It's probably not going to have the consequences that the 2022 stumble and faceplant had, but there's a trip-up game in one of those 3 games.
Yeah, I'd say 3-3 because, Michigan, I think you should be an underdog. Oregon, I just think I came into this year thinking that's the game you're going to be least competitive in. I just think they're better. But then, the last 4 games, I mean, I don't feel like Illinois is a no-doubter because of their defense right now and their run defense especially. But you have a chance in all these games because you got a quarterback. You got a passing attack. So I like Illinois over every quarterback that they face the rest of the way. Like, they have the quarterback advantage except for maybe one. And you put Luke Altmyer with Dylan Gabriel's weapons in that offense, and maybe he would be just as good. But, I feel Like Illinois got the quarterback advantage in 5 of their last 6 games. So I think that's going to win a couple games just on its own.
And I want to say, not only, I think it might be a pretty comfortable advantage quarterback wise in those games. If you really,
because Aiden Childs is probably the most talented of the guys you have left, right?
It's probably right.
I think the Minnesota kid's really solid. Callie McManus kind of is what he is. I think he's fine. He's an upgrade for Rutgers. But, the Michigan guys, I don't know enough about. Northwesterns, you surely have an advantage there. So, yeah, I think Aiden Childs, but he's like kind of Luke Altmyer last year. He's kind of getting that experience and going through all those growing pains right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. You got a quarterback, you feel good. And Illinois got a quarterback.
Yeah. Robert, a win is a win. Definitely gutsy to come back like they did. Run defense is looking like a major issue, though. Jason, if I'm Michigan, Orgy's my starting quarterback, I'm not throwing a single pass. I think you got to throw. Purdue had plenty of success throwing the ball today, by the way. Second half.
Yeah, that's such an interesting subplot going into this to see if Sean Moore will pivot off of naming Jack Tuttle as starter. I don't know that. I don't cover them well enough to say one way or the other, but I don't know how you would come in without packages set up for Orgy to get out there and run the ball.
Yeah. All right. You got anything else left, Joey? I think we covered it all here on a wild and crazy game.
It really was. Someone made a good point. I don't remember who it was. They said if you're not a fan, if you're not covering that, the stress in terms of you getting quick hits out and making sure you're getting all the content, you're pretty darn. If you're sitting on your couch with no vested interest in this, probably a pretty fun game to watch. I know a lot of people in here are like, what are you talking about? That sucked. I did not enjoy watching that second half, and I understand that.
Yeah. Other thing, 55,000 official attendance. That helps. People are talking about the NIL war chest in the comments. It helps the revenue sharing moving forward when you get all these fans here, sell out next week. And man, if you can win against Michigan, right? Like they should probably sell out their last 2 Big Ten games. Maybe they don't sell out, but getting 55,000 plus, man, getting them in the stadium, buying concessions, buying parking, all this stuff. Like you couldn't tell when Josh Whitman walked in the press conference with Jen Bielema and all of them, like they were pretty happy, right? That they found a way to win this game and get to 5-1 because they know it's hard and they know every win matters so much in building up this program.
Go to Def Super Chat. Go to Def Super Chat. Control the computers.
This one?
Yeah.
We're getting some Philly cheesesteaks?
Getting all of his money and Philly cheesesteaks. Come back every week, Def. I know you do.
Here's what I would like to see, Joey. That the plan was just Joey goes to Rutgers because I'm going to Kansas City the next week to cover Illinois basketball, and they got the Northwestern trip, right? So
I'll still do 2 Phillies. Go ahead.
But I was like, can they make this where I have to go to Rutgers? Like, which would be like if they had just 2 losses, like I have to go to Rutgers, right?
Yeah, I'm not telling you what to do. As it stands right now, I've got like a 63-degree hotel room with my name on it by myself. I don't care what to do. But
so
yeah,
if they're 8-2 or 7-3, do I need to go to Rutgers because they're like playing for stuff there?
That game
8-2 for sure.
That 7. I mean, that game takes on a totally different tone. I need to look, and this is something I should have prepared better for. When do the first playoff rankings come out? I'm not asking that because I think Illinois is going to be in the top 12. I would imagine will be in that top 25, especially if they beat Michigan.
That's a great question, Joey. It's got to be soon. So we're halfway through the season. November 5th is the first day. Yeah, stop that.
That is an interesting. That's an interesting time for Illinois in relation to its potential presence in that top 25.
Because that's after the Minnesota game, right?
That's right.
I believe. Yeah. So
yep.
That'd be
after Minnesota,
after Michigan,
right before the second open week. Yep.
So Michigan, Oregon, Minnesota. If Illinois goes 2-1 in its next 3 games, how high would they be? At 7-2 with a win over Michigan.
That's hard. It's a lot of that's the eye test. It's probably more the eye test with the college football playoff ranking than it is the AP top 25. I would be hard pressed to think it would be higher than 17.
Yeah,
17 feels like the
top
max.
20.
I would probably put them in the 18 to 22 range. Yeah. Any one of those 4 slots would not surprise me.
Illinois fans are like, why are you guys talking about this after you barely beat Purdue? Hey, because you won. And you got a chance to continue to think about these things. All right, that's all I got for you, Joey. You got anything else?
I got nothing more. I think there's some stuff happening at Memorial Stadium. Probably
basketball
We're
recruit.
prepping for a basketball visitor here, some chairs. Maybe we just go pull up a chair and have a watch of the video board.
Yeah, I saw some managers like running out chairs. That was like 30
Oh,
minutes
there's no
ago.
way. There's no way I would ever do that.
Running
You
with
see
a
it's
chair
like a
over their head.
Forklift. Get it, come drive the forklift out there and move it that way.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcast. You're watching us on YouTube. More than 400 people watching this after this game. We appreciate you guys. Do us a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notifications bell on your way out. It really, really helps us out. We enjoy doing these things. It kind of helps us think through what we're going to write about. So appreciate you helping us out with all of that. We'll have plenty of content from a big recruiting weekend, from a big win for Illinois, but a lot of question marks and concerns coming out of this big overtime win. So thank you to everybody. Have a great night. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.